Have you ever felt the ground give way beneath you? That stomach-dropping realization that everything you believed, everything you built your life upon, was nothing more than an elaborate illusion? It's a terrifying moment, a betrayal so profound it shakes you to your very core. Today, we're plunging into a story of such a betrayal, one that didn't unfold in a darkened alley or a hushed confession, but with a brazen, almost theatrical display of arrogance right in the heart of a successful woman's sanctuary, her office. This isn't just a tale of infidelity, it's a masterclass in resilience, a deep dive into the legal labyrinth of financial fraud, and a powerful testament to finding your strength when life tries to dismantle everything you are. Imagine Mary Johnson, a name that resonates with competence and authority within the legal community. For 15 years, she'd navigated the complex currents of law, built her firm, Johnson & Associates, into a formidable institution, and cultivated a reputation for unwavering professionalism. Her world was orderly, meticulously constructed, and deeply respected. On this particular day, the crisp, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of her expensive heels on the polished marble floors of her lobby was the only sound breaking the focused hum of productivity. Mary was immersed in case files, the kind of demanding legal work that required absolute concentration, when the polite but visibly shaken voice of her secretary crackled through the intercom. "Mrs. Johnson," the voice hesitated. "There's a young woman here who says she needs to speak with you about your husband." A curious furrow creased Mary's brow. 15 years of marriage to Robert, a seemingly conventional and affectionate partnership, and not once had her private life ever intruded on her professional domain like this. She was a woman who kept a formidable wall between personal and public, a strategy that had served her well. "Send her in," she instructed, her voice calm, betraying no hint of the nascent unease stirring within her. The door swung open, and into the impeccably ordered space of Mary's office walked a woman Mary had never laid eyes on before. What immediately struck Mary wasn't just the woman's youth, late 20s perhaps, or her overtly expensive designer-label dress that screamed more than your monthly rent, or even her unnaturally straightened, flowing hair. It was the palpable aura she carried, an almost suffocating blend of pure, unadulterated arrogance, laced with something that made Mary's stomach clench in an instinctive, primal way. This wasn't a casual visit. This was a statement. The woman didn't bother with pleasantries, didn't even sit down. Her eyes, sharp and predatory, raked over Mary's composed figure. "So, you're the famous Mary Johnson," she purred, her voice dripping with a condescending sweetness. She then did something utterly theatrical. She held up a set of shiny car keys, letting them dangle provocatively, catching the ambient light like a trophy. "I'm Crisal, and I think it's time we met." This was it, the moment of confrontation. Mary felt the sting of the words, the blatant disrespect, but years of high-stakes courtroom battles had forged in her an iron will and an unshakable poker face. She met Crisal's gaze with the same neutral expression she reserved for aggressive opposing counsel. "I'm sorry," Mary stated, her voice even, professional. "I don't think we've been introduced. How can I help you?" Crisal's response was a brittle, almost theatrical laugh, a sound that grated on Mary's nerves like glass breaking. "Oh, we don't need introductions. I know exactly who you are. You're Robert's wife, the one he complains about being so boring and focused on work all the time." The words landed like a physical blow, a calculated slap designed to wound and destabilize. For any woman hearing such a brutal assessment from her husband's mistress, delivered with such venom, would be devastating. But Mary didn't flinch. Her training, her life's work, had taught her to withstand pressure, to never show a flicker of weakness, even when her carefully constructed world felt like it was fracturing into irreparable pieces. Inside, a storm raged, but outside, her demeanor remained unyielding. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave," Mary said, her tone a clear dismissal. "Not yet," Crisal retorted, advancing further into Mary's office, closing the distance to her desk, a predatory gleam in her eyes. I came here for a reason. You see these keys?" She shook them again, the sharp jingle a mocking soundtrack to Mary's unraveling composure. "They're to my brand new Mercedes. Silver leather interior, all the bells and whistles. Robert bought it for me last week." Mary's heart seemed to seize in her chest. Robert bought a Mercedes? Just last month they had discussed their budget, and he had explicitly stated that a new car for either of them was financially out of reach. The memory of that conversation, the shared constraint, now twisted into a sickening irony. "I don't believe you," Mary said, her voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to her usual commanding presence. Kreisel's smile widened, morphing into something truly cruel and triumphant. "Oh, you want proof?" She pulled a sleek designer folder from her equally designer purse and tossed it onto Mary's desk with a flourish. "Here's the registration, the purchase agreement, everything. Robert signed for it, paid for it, and gave it to me because he loves me." Mary's hands, usually steady and precise, trembled slightly as she reached for the documents. This was her domain. Paperwork, legalities, the cold hard facts contained within official records. Her lawyer's instinct, honed over years, took over despite the personal devastation. As her eyes scanned the registration, the world truly did begin to tilt beneath her. The car, this beacon of betrayal and lavish deceit, was not registered to Robert, nor to Kreisel. It was registered to Johnson and Associates law firm, her business. "This car?" Mary began slowly, her voice still a thin thread, laced now with a growing, icy clarity. "Is registered to my company." Kreisel's confident, almost smug expression faltered, just for a fleeting moment, a flicker of genuine surprise, a crack in her carefully constructed facade of victory. "What do you mean, your company?" she stammered, the mocking tone dissolving. Mary looked up, and for the first time since Kreisel had swaggered into her office, the raw, suffocating shock began to recede, replaced by something cold, sharp, and intensely focused, pure, unadulterated anger. "This car belongs to my law firm," Mary stated, her voice regaining its power, now infused with a steely resolve. She held up the registration papers, a damning piece of evidence. "The registration says so right here, which means my husband used my business to buy you a car." "That's impossible," Kreisel protested, but her voice had lost its earlier venom and swagger, replaced by a tremor of uncertainty. "Robert bought it for me. He said he had the money." "Where did you think a salesman got $70,000 for a Mercedes?" Mary countered, rising slowly from her chair. She was a tall woman, and now she used every inch of her height, her gaze piercing through Kreisel's rapidly fading bravado. "Did you think he just had that lying around?" Kreisel's face went pale, her carefully applied makeup unable to mask the sudden fear. "He said he had savings. He said he was successful." Mary walked around her desk, the registration papers clutched in her hand. "He is successful," she declared, her voice laced with chilling sarcasm, "at stealing from his wife's business." She looked at the registration again, her lawyer's mind now fully engaged, seeing details she had missed in the initial shock. "This purchase was made using my business credit line. That means you're driving a car that I paid for." "No," Kreisel stammered, backing instinctively toward the door, her earlier confidence utterly shattered. "He wouldn't do that. He loves me." "Does he?" Mary asked, a cold, hard edge to her voice. "Because a man who loves you wouldn't forge business documents to buy you gifts. And that's what he did. Forged my signature on the credit application." Mary walked to her office window and looked down into the parking lot. There it was, the gleaming silver Mercedes, a monument to deception, shimmering under the afternoon sun. Her car, bought with her money, gifted to her husband's mistress. "I want you to listen to me very carefully," Mary said, turning back to face Kreisel, her voice low and dangerous. "That car down there belongs to me. The registration proves it, and you're going to give me those keys right now." "I won't!" Kreisel cried, clutching the keys defensively to her chest, a desperate, cornered animal. "Robert gave it to me." "Robert doesn't own it," Mary stated, her gaze unyielding. "I do." Without breaking eye contact, Mary pressed the button on her desk phone. "Security," she commanded, her voice firm and clear. "I need you to come to my office immediately. We have someone here who has stolen property belonging to the firm." Crisal's eyes went wide with panic. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "I can and I will," Mary responded, every word a hammer blow of resolve. "You came to my office to humiliate me, to show off something you thought proved you had won. But all you've done is show me that my husband is a thief, and you're an accomplice." A moment later, a polite knock on the door. "Mrs. Johnson, you called?" It was Mike, one of the firm's security guards. "Yes, Mike. This woman has keys to a vehicle that was purchased using fraudulent documents and my business credit. I need you to escort her to the parking lot where she will return the vehicle to me." Crisal looked around the opulent office like a trapped animal, her desperate eyes darting from Mary to Mike and back again. "This isn't over," she spat, her voice laced with impotent fury. "You're right," Mary agreed, her voice deadly calm, imbued with a newfound chilling conviction. "It's not over, because now I'm going to find out exactly how much money my husband has stolen from me, and then I'm going to make sure both of you pay for every penny." As Mike gently but firmly escorted a weeping Crisal from the office, Mary sat back down at her desk. Her hands, which had trembled only moments before, were now steady. Her mind, previously reeling, was now clear, sharp, and focused. She had work to do. A lifetime of building, of trusting, of loving, had just been reduced to a pile of evidence, and Mary Johnson, the lawyer, was ready to build a case, not for a client, but for herself. The office, now silent save for the faint hum of her computer, felt like a battlefield after the storm. The silver car keys, now hers, felt heavy in her palm, a tangible symbol of the cost of betrayal. Through her expansive window, she could see Crisal, a small, distraught figure, standing next to the Mercedes, frantically talking on her phone, tears streaming down her face. Robert, no doubt. The registration papers were still spread across Mary's desk, no longer just documents, but damning evidence. Evidence of betrayal, of theft, of a marriage meticulously built on a foundation of lies. Her intercom buzzed again, jolting her from her grim contemplation. "Mrs. Johnson, your 4:00 appointment is here." Mary glanced at her watch. An entire hour had evaporated since Crisal's dramatic departure, an hour that had redefined her life. "Cancel my appointments for the rest of the day, please," Mary instructed, her voice calm despite the churning emotions within. "Tell them something urgent came up." "Of course, Mrs. Johnson," her assistant replied, a note of concern in her voice. "Is everything all right?" Mary almost laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that never quite escaped her lips. Nothing will ever be all right again, she thought, but her outward response was a practiced professional assurance. "I'm fine. Just need to take care of some personal business." With a deep, fortifying breath, Mary opened her laptop. Her law firm, a testament to her intelligence and relentless work ethic, was a successful enterprise. Multiple accounts, credit lines, investment portfolios, all managed with meticulous care, all protected by layers of security designed to prevent precisely this kind of insidious breach. But Robert had known everything. He had access to her home office, to her most guarded personal details, passwords, her social security number, her mother's maiden name, all the seemingly innocuous pieces of information that, in the wrong hands, could be weaponized for fraud. He had used her trust as a key to unlock her financial fortress. She logged into the business banking system. The business credit account, once a symbol of her firm's financial health, now held a balance she didn't recognize. $73,000 charged in the past 6 months. The Mercedes, a glittering symbol of Robert's affair, was merely the largest single purchase. The records unfurled a tapestry of deceit, hotel bills from luxury resorts she had never visited, shimmering jewelry store charges for gifts she had never received, restaurant receipts from upscale establishments where she had never dined. Each transaction was a tiny cut, bleeding money from her business, bleeding trust from her marriage. Her phone rang, startling her. Robert's name flashed on the screen. She watched it ring, then again and again, a desperate, insistent plea. Finally, she answered, her voice a cool, detached monotone. "Hello, Robert." "Mary, thank God." His voice spilled out, laced with a feigned panic. "Listen, there's been some kind of mistake. Chrysal called me crying about the car and security guards. She's confused about something." "So, the only confusion, Robert," Mary stated slowly, each word deliberate, "is how you ever thought you'd get away with stealing from me." Silence. A long, agonizing silence stretched across the phone line. "Robert, are you there?" "I can explain," he finally whispered, his voice small, stripped of its usual charm. "Can you?" Mary challenged, her voice rising now, the cool detachment replaced by a sharp, cutting edge. "Can you explain how my business credit was used to buy a car for your girlfriend? Can you explain these hotel bills, these jewelry charges, this apartment rental agreement I'm looking at right now?" As she spoke, her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up more damning records. Chrysal's apartment lease, co-signed by Robert, using false financial information from Mary's business. The audacity of it, the systematic nature of the betrayal, was breathtaking. "How long?" Mary asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. "How long what?" Robert feigned ignorance. "How long have you been stealing from me to pay for your affair?" Another long, crushing silence. Then, Robert's voice, small and utterly defeated. "It started small, just dinner here and there. I was going to pay it back." "When?" Mary demanded, incredulous. "When were you going to pay back $73,000 on a salesman's salary? I didn't mean for it to go this far." Mary felt something break inside her chest, but it wasn't her heart. Her heart was too numb for that kind of pain. This was colder, like a sheet of ice cracking, revealing the chilling truth beneath. "How long have you been sleeping with her?" Mary asked, her voice an icy whisper. "Mary, please, answer me." 2 years. 2 years. Mary closed her eyes. A montage of missed signs, subtle shifts, and unsettling moments flashing before her. Late nights at the office. Business trips that felt suspiciously prolonged. The gradual, almost imperceptible way he had stopped touching her, stopped truly talking to her, stopped sharing anything real. "Did you ever love me?" she asked, the question almost rhetorical. "Of course I did. I do." "No," Mary corrected, her voice firm, resolute. "You don't. You don't steal from people you love. You don't humiliate them, and you certainly don't send your mistress to their office to mock them." "I didn't send Chrysal anywhere," Robert protested, a sliver of his old self-preservation attempting to emerge. "She did that on her own." Mary almost believed him. The Chrysal she had met certainly seemed impulsive enough, arrogant enough, to make such a grand, ill-conceived gesture. But it didn't matter now. The details of Chrysal's motivation were irrelevant to the wreckage Robert had created. "I want you out of the house," Mary stated, her voice devoid of emotion. "Mary, we can work this out. We can go to counseling." His desperation was palpable. "We can't work out theft, Robert. We can't work out 2 years of lies. We can't work out you using my business to fund your affair." "Where am I supposed to go?" he whined, the victim card a desperate last play. Mary looked at the apartment lease agreement still on her screen. "I'm sure Chrysal has room." "Oh, wait," she added, a wicked glint in her eyes. "I'm canceling the lease payments. She'll be evicted by the end of the month." "You can't do that," Robert exploded. "I can do whatever I want with my money," Mary said, her voice now pure ice. "And Robert, if you're not out of my house by tonight, I'm calling the police and reporting the theft. All of it." She hung up before he could respond, cutting him off, cutting him out. Mary sat in her office as the sun dipped below the city skyline, painting the sky in fiery hues that mirrored the blaze within her. Her marriage was a scorched earth, her husband a confirmed thief, her business violated. Yet underneath the searing pain and the profound betrayal, an unexpected sensation began to surface. Relief. For 2 years she had felt Robert pulling away, the subtle, emotional disengagement that gnaws at the soul. She had blamed herself, twisting herself into knots of self-doubt, convinced she was too focused on work, too boring, too demanding, too something. She had made endless excuses for his distance, his unexplained coldness, his subtle, constant criticisms. Now she knew. It wasn't her fault. He had been living a double life, a meticulous charade, and she had been the unwitting victim, not the problem. With newfound clarity, Mary opened a fresh document on her computer and began typing. The lawyer in her, the meticulous strategist, was fully awake. She had a divorce to file, criminal charges to consider, and a business, her life's work, to protect. She was Mary Johnson, attorney at law, and she knew exactly what she needed to do. Crisal, in her misguided arrogance, had come to Mary's office believing she was flaunting her victory. Instead, she had unknowingly handed Mary the incontrovertible evidence needed to dismantle both her and Robert. A faint, grim smile touched Mary's lips for the first time in hours. Tomorrow, the real work, the work of reclamation and justice, would begin. The pre-dawn chill still clung to the city streets when Mary arrived at her office at 6:00 a.m., a full 3 hours before her staff typically began their day. She hadn't gone home last night, opting instead for the sterile anonymity of a hotel. Her assistant had confirmed via text that Robert had indeed packed his personal belongings and left, vacating the house Mary had meticulously made a home. The silence in the empty law firm was a balm, a necessary quietude that allowed her mind to function unimpeded. No interruptions, no probing questions, just her and the undeniable evidence she needed to construct her case. She spread everything across the large conference room table, a sprawling, damning puzzle waiting to be solved. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts, jewelry purchase records, restaurant charges, and dozens of other documents. Each paper, each line item, painted a clearer, more horrifying picture of Robert's systematic betrayal and theft. Mary had built her formidable reputation on being thorough, on leaving no stone unturned, whether it was a complex criminal defense, a demanding civil litigation, or a nuanced business law case. Her approach was always the same: gather the facts, meticulously organize the evidence, and then construct an unshakable argument. Now she was building a case, not for a client, but against her own husband. The apartment lease, specifically Crisal's luxury apartment, stood out as a particularly brazen piece of the puzzle. $4,000 a month, an exorbitant sum for a woman who was, by all appearances, a mere receptionist. Robert had co-signed it, using falsified financial statements claiming he earned $200,000 annually. His actual salary, a paltry $60,000, underscored the depth of his deception. Mary methodically photographed every document, creating a digital file that would be virtually impossible to dispute in court. She had learned early in her career that documentation was everything. Without irrefutable proof, accusations were just words, easily dismissed. Her computer chimed, a new email notification. It was from Robert. "Mary, I know you're angry, but please don't do anything hasty. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Don't throw away 15 years of marriage over a few bad decisions. I'll pay everything back, I promise." "A few bad decisions," Mary mused, her gaze sweeping over the table laden with evidence. $73,000 in documented theft, 2 years of calculated lies, a systematic and deliberate betrayal of their marriage and her business. He truly called that a few bad decisions? The sheer disconnect, the utter lack of true remorse for the act itself, only solidified her resolve. She deleted the email without a response. The jewelry store receipts were particularly painful to review, each one a sharp jab to her soul. A sparkling diamond necklace, purchased on Valentine's Day, the very day Robert had claimed he was too busy for dinner with her. Elegant pearl earrings gifted to Crisal for her birthday, while Mary had received nothing for hers. A watch, a single timepiece, that cost more than Mary's monthly mortgage payment. Every single purchase was a bitter memory of Robert returning home late, distracted, distant, emotionally unavailable. Now she knew precisely where his attention and her money had been focused. Patricia Williams, Mary's business partner and an equally formidable lawyer, arrived at 7:30, finding Mary still in the conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of her marriage. "I got your text," Patricia said, closing the door quietly behind her, her expression already etched with concern. "What's this emergency about?" Mary and Patricia had built Johnson and Associates together over 8 years, two ambitious women forging their path in a legal landscape often dominated by men. Patricia was, without question, the only person Mary trusted implicitly, completely. "Robert has been embezzling from the firm," Mary stated simply, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. Patricia sank heavily into one of the conference room chairs, her own shock momentarily stripping her of her usual composure. "How much?" "$73,000 so far," Mary replied. "Maybe more." She pushed the stack of business credit statements across the table to Patricia. "He's been forging my signature to access our credit lines, using the money to fund an affair." Patricia reviewed the documents, her sharp legal mind already working through the implications, her expression darkening with each damning page. "This is fraud, criminal fraud." "I know," Mary whispered. "I'm so sorry." "How did you find out?" Mary recounted Crisal's arrogant visit, the shocking revelation of the car registration, the subsequent unraveling of the apartment lease, and the full, horrifying scope of evidence she had uncovered in the hours since. Patricia listened without a single interruption, her lawyer's mind processing, analyzing, strategizing. "What do you want to do?" Patricia asked when Mary finally finished, her gaze firm, supportive. "Everything," Mary declared, her voice now clear and resolute. "Divorce, criminal charges, civil litigation to recover the money. I want them both to understand that actions have consequences." Patricia nodded, her decision made. "I'll support you completely. But Mary, are you sure? Criminal charges against Robert will be public. Your personal life will be in the newspapers, scrutinized by everyone." Mary had wrestled with this very thought during her sleepless night. As a highly successful attorney, she had always fiercely guarded her privacy, understanding the professional ramifications of public scandal. But silence, she realized, protected Robert and Crisal. It did not protect her. "Let them print it," she said, her voice steely. "I have nothing to be ashamed of. I didn't steal anything. I didn't lie to anyone. I didn't betray anyone. What about the business? Some clients might be concerned about the security of their files." Mary had considered that too. "Our security protocols prevented Robert from accessing client information," she explained. "He only had access to financial accounts because I trusted him. That trust was misplaced, but it doesn't affect our ability to represent clients." Patricia stood and walked to the large window, gazing out at the bustling city below, a microcosm of lives being lived, often with hidden complexities. "I've been practicing law for 15 years, and I've never seen a case this personal," she mused, her voice thoughtful. "Are you sure you can handle this emotionally?" "I'm angry," Mary admitted, her jaw tightening. "But anger can be useful. It focuses the mind, makes you determined. I've represented abuse victims, fraud victims, people whose trust was violated by those closest to them. Now I understand what they felt." "And you're sure there's no chance of reconciliation?" "Robert seemed genuinely sorry when I met him at the Christmas party." Mary let out a short, humorless laugh. "He's sorry he got caught, Patricia. If Crisal hadn't been so arrogant, so determined to humiliate me, I might never have discovered any of this. He could have kept stealing from me for years." She began to gather the documents into neat, organized piles, a symbolic act of taking back control. "I'm going to visit the bank this morning to close his access to all accounts. Then I'm filing for divorce. Then I'm calling the prosecutor's office." Patricia returned to her seat, her gaze unwavering. "I'll handle the bank accounts. You focus on the legal filings. And Mary, I'm proud of you. A lot of people would try to hide this, pretend it didn't happen. You're facing it head on." "I'm too old to pretend my life is something it's not," Mary stated, her voice imbued with a newfound clarity and resolve. 15 years of marriage, and I never really knew him. I won't waste any more time living a lie. As Patricia left to tackle the banking issues, Mary began drafting the divorce papers. She had handled hundreds of divorces in her career, each a testament to human fallibility, but none had ever felt as starkly clear-cut as this one. There were no messy custody issues to complicate matters, no protracted debates about asset division. Robert had forfeited any claim to joint property the moment he chose to steal from her. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I don't know what you think you're proving, but Robert loves me. He left you for me. Deal with it." Chrysal, still fighting a war she had already definitively lost. Mary's response was swift, precise, and devastating. "Robert left me for $73,000 of my money. Without that, he never would have been able to afford you." She blocked the number and returned to her work, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over her. By noon, the divorce papers would be filed. By evening, Robert and Chrysal would discover that their fairy tale romance had a very expensive price tag, a price Mary was determined they would both pay. Mary spent her lunch break in the district attorney's office, sitting across from James Foster, a prosecutor she had faced countless times in court, sometimes as adversaries, sometimes as colleagues working toward a shared vision of justice. Today, however, she was neither. Today, she was a victim seeking help. James, a man known for his calm demeanor and sharp intellect, reviewed the extensive evidence Mary had provided. "This is substantial, Mary," he acknowledged, his brow furrowed in concentration. 73,000 in documented fraud, forged signatures, false financial statements. We could pursue multiple felony charges. "What are my options?" Mary asked, her voice steady. "We could charge him with embezzlement, fraud, identity theft, and making false statements to financial institutions. If convicted, he's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison." A chill, surprisingly visceral, ran down Mary's spine at the words. Despite the enormity of Robert's betrayal, the thought of him, the man she had loved for 15 years, behind bars, was a difficult image to process. But she swiftly pushed the feeling aside. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about holding someone accountable for their deliberate destruction of another person's life and livelihood. "What about Chrysal Williams?" Mary pressed. "She directly benefited from the stolen money." "That's trickier," James admitted, tapping his pen against his legal pad. "If she knew the money was stolen, she could be charged as an accomplice. But if she genuinely believed Robert had the right to spend that money, she might not be criminally liable." "She knew," Mary asserted, her voice firm. "When she came to my office, she was surprised that the car was registered to my business, yes, but she wasn't surprised that Robert had spent so much money on her. She knew he didn't earn enough for those kinds of gifts." James made careful notes. "I'll need to interview her, and Robert, of course. But Mary, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Once we file criminal charges, there's no going back. Your marriage will be very publicly over." "My marriage was over 2 years ago, James," Mary replied, her gaze unwavering. "I just didn't know it yet." Leaving the prosecutor's office, Mary drove directly to her bank. Patricia had already frozen Robert's access to all business accounts, a critical first step. But Mary now needed to sever his ties to their personal finances as well. "Mrs. Johnson," the bank manager greeted her, his expression somber as she settled into his office. "I was so sorry to hear about your situation. We've already implemented the changes your partner requested for the business accounts." "Thank you," Mary said, her gratitude genuine. "Now I need to address our personal accounts. Joint checking, savings, investments. I want Robert's name removed from everything." The manager reviewed his computer screen, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "I can freeze the accounts immediately to prevent any further unauthorized withdrawals, but removing him completely will require either his signature or a court order." "I'll have a court order by tomorrow, mais," Mary stated, her voice calm and absolute. She left the bank feeling an increasing sense of control, each step she took closing another door on Robert's ability to continue stealing from her, continue harming her. Her phone rang just as she reached her car. It was Patricia. "Mary, I just got an interesting call," Patricia began, a note of surprise in her voice. "Robert's employer. Apparently Robert listed our firm as a reference when he applied for his current job 3 years ago. They want to verify his employment history." Mary frowned. "Robert never worked for us." "Exactly," Patricia confirmed. "It looks like he's been lying about his work history, too. His resume claims he was a consultant for Johnson & Associates for 2 years before taking his current sales position." "Another lie, Another deception, another thread in the vast, tangled web Robert had woven. Mary wondered, with a chilling sense of dread, how many other false statements Robert had made over the years. How many other lies permeated his very existence. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," Patricia said simply. "That he never worked here, and we have no record of him being associated with our firm in any professional capacity." Mary could easily imagine Robert's employer's reaction to that news. A salesman whose resume contained outright lies wouldn't keep his job long in any reputable company. "Good," she said, a sense of grim satisfaction echoing in her voice. Let the truth come out everywhere. And that evening, Mary sat in her home office, the same office where Robert had accessed her passwords, where he had covertly forged her signature, meticulously planning her future. She was drafting a comprehensive legal strategy, approaching her own case with the same exacting attention to detail she gave her most high-profile clients. The divorce, she knew, would be straightforward, at least legally. Virginia was an equitable distribution state, meaning marital assets would be divided fairly. But Robert's blatant theft had, in her mind, forfeited any claim to joint property. He would leave the marriage with precisely what he had brought to it: nothing. The criminal case, however, would be more complex. She needed to prove intent, to meticulously demonstrate a systematic pattern of deception, and to show that Robert knew his actions were unequivocally illegal. The evidence was strong, undeniably so, but prosecutors, Mary knew from experience, preferred cases that were slam dunks, leaving no room for doubt or lengthy trials. The civil litigation, a separate but parallel track, would allow her to recover the full amount of the stolen money, plus damages. Even if Robert went to prison, he would still owe her every penny he had stolen, plus interest and legal fees. He would not escape financial accountability. Mary's doorbell rang at 8:00 p.m. Through the security camera, she saw a young woman she didn't recognize, standing nervously on her porch, holding an official-looking envelope. She opened the door, leaving the security chain in place, a new automatic caution now ingrained in her. "Can I help you?" "Are you Mary Johnson?" the woman asked, her voice timid. "Yes," Mary confirmed. "I was hired to deliver this to you personally," the woman explained, holding up the envelope. "I need to see your ID and have you sign for it." Legal papers. Someone was serving her with legal documents. Mary's mind, always racing, sifted through the possibilities as she signed for the envelope. Inside was a letter from a law firm she had never heard of, representing Crisall Williams. The letter demanded that Mary return the Mercedes immediately, claiming Crisall was the legal owner regardless of the registration documents. Mary almost laughed out loud, a sharp, bitter sound. Crisall had hired a lawyer, probably with money she didn't have, to try and reclaim a car that clearly, unequivocally belonged to Mary's business. Mary called the law firm immediately. "This is Mary Johnson," she informed the receptionist, her voice professional, commanding. "I received a demand letter from your office today regarding a vehicle registration dispute. I'd like to speak with the attorney who drafted it." A few minutes later, a young man's voice, sounding slightly overwhelmed, came on the line. "This is Attorney Mitchell Green. I represent Ms. Williams in this matter." "Mr. Green," Mary began, her voice carefully modulated, carrying the weight of her seniority and expertise. "I'm an attorney myself, and I have to say this demand letter shows a fundamental misunderstanding of property law. The vehicle in question is registered to my business. The registration documents are clear and unambiguous. Ms. Williams claims the vehicle was a gift from her boyfriend who purchased it legally," Green stated, his voice a little defensive. "Her boyfriend is my husband," Mary cut in, "and he purchased it using forged documents and stolen money. I've already filed criminal charges against him for embezzlement and fraud." Silence. A stunned, heavy silence on the other end of the line. "Mr. Green, are you there?" Mary prompted. I wasn't aware of any criminal charges." "Check with the prosecutor's office tomorrow," Mary advised, her tone crisp and unyielding. "Case number 2024, County Route 1847. Your client is involved in a felony theft case. I'd strongly advise her to return any and all property she received from Robert Johnson before she's charged as an accomplice." Mary hung up, feeling a deep, abiding satisfaction. Chrysal was learning the hard way that actions had very real consequences. And apparently, she had found the cheapest, least informed lawyer in town to represent her. Tomorrow, Mary knew, would bring new challenges. But tonight, Mary felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. She was finally, truly fighting back. Mary's alarm chimed at 5:00 a.m., but she was already awake, her mind meticulously reviewing her strategy for the day ahead. The criminal charges against Robert had been formally filed yesterday evening. By now, the police would have contacted him, officially notifying him of the grave accusations he faced. Her phone, a silent witness to his escalating panic, bore 17 missed calls from Robert's number and 12 frantic text messages, each more desperate than the last. She deleted them all without reading past the first few words, severing the last vestiges of communication with the man who had stolen her life. At 7:30, Mary was already deep into her morning's work when Patricia arrived, a steaming cup of coffee in hand and a fresh piece of news. "I just got off the phone with our insurance company," Patricia reported, settling into a chair opposite Mary's desk. "They're launching their own investigation into the fraudulent charges. If they determine that Robert committed insurance fraud by using false information to access our business credit, they'll pursue their own criminal charges." Now, how much additional exposure does that create for him? Mary asked, her tone clinical, detached. "Insurance fraud is a separate felony," Patricia explained. "He could be looking at additional prison time plus restitution to the insurance company." Mary nodded slowly. She felt no satisfaction in Robert's mounting legal troubles, nor any pity. He had made his choices, and now the complex machinery of justice was inexorably grinding forward. "There's more," Patricia continued, her voice grim. "I got a call from Chrysal's employer yesterday evening. Apparently, she missed work to deal with the car situation, and when she finally showed up, she was crying and distracted. Her supervisor wanted to know if there was anything they should be concerned about." "What did you tell them?" "The truth," Patricia replied, "that she was involved in a situation where stolen property needed to be recovered. I didn't mention the criminal investigation, but I also didn't lie." Mary's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but a flicker of intuition made her check. "This is Chrysal. We need to talk. I didn't know the money was stolen. Robert lied to me, too." Mary showed the message to Patricia, who raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. She's trying to distance herself from Robert." "Too late for that," Mary said, her voice hard. "She made her choice when she came to my office to humiliate me." At 9:00 a.m., Mary had a meeting with her divorce attorney, Sarah Chin, a respected colleague she had known for years, a specialist in complex divorce cases involving business assets. "This is one of the cleaner divorces I've seen," Sarah commented, reviewing Mary's meticulously organized documentation. No children, clear evidence of marital misconduct, documented theft of marital assets. Virginia courts don't look favorably on spouses who steal from each other. "Hey, how long will the process take?" Mary asked. "With this level of documentation and Robert's criminal charges, I'd estimate 4 to 6 months for a final decree. He could contest it, but given the evidence, no competent attorney would advise him to fight." "What about spousal support?" Sarah laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Mary, you earn 5 times what he does, and he stole from you. There's no scenario where you'd owe him support. In fact, given his criminal conduct, he's forfeited any claim to support from you." Mary felt a profound weight lift from her shoulders. For years, she had been financially supporting Robert without even realizing the extent of it. Her income had paid their mortgage, their car payments, their entire lifestyle. His salary had been supplemental, pocket money. He apparently felt free to spend on his affair. "One thing to consider," Sarah continued, her expression turning more serious. "Robert might try to claim that some of the money he spent was for legitimate marital purposes. Hotel rooms, dinners, entertainment. He could argue that you benefited from some of the expenditures." "I have receipts showing exactly where the money went," Mary countered, her voice firm. Hotels in cities I've never visited, restaurants I've never been to, jewelry I've never seen, none of it benefited me. After the meeting with Sarah, Mary returned to her office to find an unexpected, unwelcome visitor waiting in the lobby. Robert sat in one of the plush leather chairs, looking considerably smaller, older, and thoroughly defeated than she remembered. He stood hesitantly when he saw her. "Mary, please, just 5 minutes." "You need to leave, Robert," Mary stated, her voice devoid of warmth. "I have nothing to say to you." "I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "But the police called this morning. Criminal charges, prison time. This is going too far." Mary looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time in months. When had he become a stranger? When had she stopped seeing him clearly? "What did you think would happen, Robert?" she challenged, her voice rising in disbelief. "Did you think I would just accept that you stole from me? That I would pretend not to notice $73,000 missing from my business?" "I was going to pay it back," he insisted, the familiar refrain. "When?" Mary scoffed. "You don't earn enough in 2 years to pay back what you stole in 6 months, and that's assuming you stop spending money on Chrysal completely." Robert's shoulders sagged, his facade crumbling. "I made mistakes." "You committed crimes," Mary corrected, unyielding. "Multiple felonies, and you involved my business, my reputation, my livelihood in your affair." "I love you," he whispered quietly, a desperate, hollow echo. Mary felt nothing. No pain, no anger, no sadness, just an eerie emptiness where her feelings for him used to be. "No, you don't," she stated plainly. "People who love each other don't steal from each other. They don't lie for years. They don't humiliate each other." "What about Chrysal? She's lost her apartment, her car, probably her job. She doesn't deserve this." Mary stared at him, incredulous. "Are you seriously asking me to feel sorry for your mistress? The woman who came to my office to mock me?" "She was trying to make you jealous," Robert insisted. "She thought if you knew about us, you'd fight for me." "She was trying to hurt me, Robert," Mary said, her voice rising with cold fury. "And you let her. You gave her the weapons to hurt me." Robert was quiet for a long moment, defeated. Then, a last desperate attempt at damage control. "Can't we work this out privately? Without the police, without courts, I'll sign the divorce papers. Give up any claim to the house or your business. Just drop the criminal charges." Mary felt something cold settle in her chest. Even now, facing prison time, Robert was trying to negotiate, trying to minimize the consequences of his actions, trying to escape accountability. "No," she said simply, her voice like granite. "No." She turned toward the elevator. "You had 2 years to work things out privately, Robert. You chose to steal from me instead. Now you face the consequences." As the elevator doors silently closed between them, Mary saw Robert sitting back down in the lobby chair, his head in his hands. She felt no pity for him. He had made his choices, and now she was making hers. Back in her office, Mary called the prosecutor's office to confirm that Robert had been formally notified of the charges. Then she called her insurance company to check on their ongoing investigation. Finally, she called her accountant to begin the painstaking process of documenting the full financial impact of Robert's theft, every last penny. Every call, every document, every legal filing was another deliberate step away from the woman who had trusted blindly and towards the woman who would never be a victim again. By the end of the day, Robert's access to everything Mary had built was completely severed. He could no longer hurt her financially, professionally, or personally. For the first time in 2 years, Mary felt truly safe. 3 weeks after filing criminal charges, Mary sat in her office, methodically reviewing the prosecutor's burgeoning case file. The investigation had expanded far beyond her initial complaint, uncovering a deeper, more pervasive pattern of deception. Robert's employer had summarily fired him after discovering the blatant lies on his resume, and they were cooperating fully with the criminal investigation, providing damning evidence of their own. "It gets worse," James Foster, the district attorney, had told her during their last meeting. "We found evidence that Robert used your business information to open multiple credit cards in the company name. cards you never even knew existed. Mary felt a familiar, sickening chill. "How much?" she had asked, dreading the answer. "Another $30,000 in charges. Hotels, restaurants, shopping sprees." James paused, his expression grim. "The credit card companies are treating it as identity theft, since your signature was forged on the applications." The amount kept growing, a metastasizing financial cancer. What had started as $73,000 in documented theft was now over $100,000. Mary wondered how much more they would uncover, how many more layers of Robert's deceit would be peeled back. "There's something else," James continued, his voice heavy. "Chrysal Williams' apartment lease. Robert didn't just co-sign it using false financial information. He forged bank statements showing that your business was guaranteeing the lease payments." Mary's eyes widened in disbelief. "What does that mean legally?" "It means if she can't pay her rent," James explained, "the landlord can legally come after your business for the money. Robert essentially used your company to guarantee his mistress's living expenses." Mary closed her eyes, taking a deep, ragged breath. The violation felt endless, a never-ending assault on her entire life. Each new discovery was a fresh wound, showing how thoroughly Robert had betrayed not just their marriage, but everything she had worked so tirelessly to build. "Can we void the lease?" "We're working on it," James assured her. "The landlord is cooperative, as they certainly don't want to be involved in a criminal case, but it will take time." After the meeting, Mary drove to her house now definitively since Robert had been officially served with divorce papers and a court order to vacate. She needed to collect some documents from her home office and check on the property. As she pulled into her driveway, she was surprised, then infuriated, to find Chrysal's silver car already there. Mary calmly parked behind the small sedan, blocking it in, a silent act of defiance. She walked to her front door, and as she approached, she could hear voices inside. Robert and Chrysal arguing loudly. "You said she would never find out," Chrysal was wailing. "You said the money was yours to spend. I thought I could replace it before she noticed." Robert's voice, equally desperate, replied. "The business was doing well. I thought I had time." "Time? Time for what? To steal more?" Mary put her key in the lock and opened the door, stepping into the chaotic scene. Both Robert and Chrysal spun towards her, their faces etched with guilt and raw fear. "What are you doing in my house?" Mary asked, her voice dangerously calm. "I still live here," Robert asserted, but his voice lacked any conviction. "No, you don't," Mary countered, pulling out her phone. "You were served with papers ordering you to vacate the premises. This is criminal trespass. I'm calling the police." "Wait!" Chrysal cried, stepping forward, her face blotchy from tears. "Please, we just need to talk to you. We have nothing to discuss." "Yes, we do," Chrysal insisted, desperation overriding her fear. "I lost my job yesterday, and my apartment. Robert can't pay the lease because he doesn't have any money." Mary looked at Robert, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "So now you understand what I've been trying to tell you," Mary said to Chrysal, her voice gentle despite the fire within her. "He never had money. Everything he gave you was stolen from me." "I know that now," Chrysal whispered, her voice broken. "And I'm sorry. I never should have come to your office. I was wrong." "Yes, you were," Mary agreed, "but I didn't know the money was stolen. I thought Robert was successful, that he earned enough to take care of me. I was naive, but I wasn't a criminal." Mary studied Chrysal's face. The arrogance from their first meeting was gone, replaced by a raw, unvarnished fear and desperation. "What do you want from me?" Mary asked. "I want to make this right," Chrysal pleaded. "I'll testify against Robert if it helps your case. I'll return anything he gave me that I still have. I just want this to be over." Robert turned on Chrysal, his face contorted with fury. "You're going to testify against me after everything I did for you?" "Everything you did for me was with stolen money," Chrysal shot back, her own anger finally erupting. "I'm not going to prison because you lied to me." Mary watched, a detached observer, as their toxic relationship crumbled in real time. Without money to bind them together, they had nothing left but accusations and blame. "Robert," Mary said quietly, cutting through their spat, You need to leave my house now or I'm calling the police." "This is my home too," he argued weakly. "No, it's not," Mary corrected, her voice firm. "I bought this house with my money before we were married. Your name isn't on the deed. You have no legal right to be here." Robert looked around the living room, a space he had occupied for years, yet now seemed to see for the first time. The furniture Mary had chosen, the artwork she had bought, the life she had meticulously built, a life he had never truly been a part of, only a parasitic presence within. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked, his voice hollow. "That's not my problem anymore," Mary stated, the finality chilling. Robert gathered a small bag of clothes and left without another word, his exit as pathetic as Chrysal's entrance had been audacious. Chrysal started to follow him, then stopped, turning back to Mary. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, her voice small, "I really am sorry about everything." Mary looked at the young woman who had, in her misguided arrogance, revealed the deep, festering wound in Mary's marriage. But looking at her now, Mary realized Chrysal hadn't destroyed anything. She had simply revealed what was already broken beyond repair. "I believe you're sorry," Mary said, "but being sorry doesn't undo the damage." "I know," Chrysal replied, fresh tears welling in her eyes. "But maybe I can help make it right. I kept records of everything Robert gave me, every dinner, every gift, every trip. I can help you prove how much he stole." Mary considered the offer. From a purely legal standpoint, Chrysal's testimony would be invaluable. A co-conspirator, turning state's evidence, could make the difference between a conviction and a lengthy, draining legal battle. "Call the prosecutor's office," Mary instructed, a flicker of strategic satisfaction in her eyes. "Tell them you want to cooperate with the investigation." After Chrysal left, the house settled into an almost profound silence, a quiet Mary hadn't experienced in weeks. It was no longer the tense, strained quiet of a marriage in crisis, but the peaceful stillness of a home reclaimed, a sanctuary where she felt truly safe. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Insurance company finished their investigation. They're pressing separate charges against Robert for fraud. Also, his former employer wants to meet with you tomorrow. Apparently, they have information that might help your case. Mary smiled faintly as she read the message. Robert's house of cards was collapsing completely, layer by fraudulent layer, and she hadn't even finished building her case yet. Every lie he had told, every document he had forged, every person he had deceived was now inexorably coming to light. Justice, Mary thought, was a truly beautiful thing to watch unfold. The local newspaper splashed the story across its front page on a Thursday morning. Prominent attorney's husband charged with embezzlement. Mary found out when her assistant, looking unusually somber, brought her the paper with her morning coffee. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Johnson," her assistant said softly. "I thought you should see it before clients started calling." Mary read the article carefully, her lawyer's eye assessing its factual accuracy. It was factual, if incomplete, detailing her name, Robert's name, the extensive charges against him, and the ever-growing estimated amount of theft. The reporter had clearly done their research, even mentioning Robert's former employer had fired him for falsifying his resume. "Any calls yet?" Mary asked, bracing herself. 3 from reporters, 2 from potential clients who said they were impressed by how you handled the situation, and 1 from your mother, Mary's mother. She had been dreading that conversation. "Get my mother on the line, please." "Mary Catherine Johnson!" Her mother's voice, sharp with concern and indignation, cut through the phone. "Why did I have to read about your divorce in the newspaper?" "I was going to call you this weekend, Mama," Mary explained gently. "I wanted to wait until the legal issues were more settled." "Legal issues, honey. The paper says Robert stole over $100,000 from you. How long has this been going on?" Mary explained the situation as gently as she could, carefully omitting the most humiliating details of Chrysal's brazen visit to her office. But her mother was sharp, perceptive. She read between the lines. "There was another woman, wasn't there?" A long, weary sigh on the other end of the line. "Yes, Mama. I never liked him, you know," her mother continued, her voice softening slightly. "Too smooth, too charming. Men who work that hard to make you like them usually have something to hide. Mary had heard variations of this opinion from her mother over the years, always dismissing them as maternal overprotectiveness. Now she wondered what her mother had seen, what subtle red flags she had intuitively picked up on, that Mary, blinded by love and trust, had so thoroughly missed. "Are you okay, baby?" her mother asked, her tone deeply worried. "Financially, I mean." "I'm fine, Mama. The business is strong, and I'll recover the stolen money through the court case." "What about emotionally? 15 years of marriage, and he was lying to you the whole time." Mary paused, considering the question deeply. How did she feel? Angry, certainly. Betrayed, obviously. But underneath those churning emotions was something unexpected, something profound, relief. "I'm angry," she told her mother. "But I'm also free. I didn't realize how unhappy I had become until the unhappiness stopped." "Good girl," her mother said, her voice filled with pride. "You've always been strong. Don't let this break you down." After talking to her mother, Mary turned her attention back to the day's pressing legal work. The prosecutor had scheduled Robert's arraignment for the following week, and Mary needed to review her testimony one more time, ensuring every detail was precise and irrefutable. Her intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Johnson, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's about your husband's case." Another woman? Mary's heart sank momentarily. Was there a second mistress she didn't know about? Another layer of Robert's deception to uncover? "Send her in," Mary instructed, steeling herself. The woman who entered Mary's office was older, perhaps 50, well-dressed, but visibly nervous. She introduced herself as Nancy Roberts. "I work at First National Bank," Nancy said, her voice trembling slightly. "In the loan department. I think I may have information relevant to your case against Robert Johnson." Mary invited her to sit down, her curiosity piqued, her professional instincts kicking in. "What kind of information?" "Mr. Johnson came to our bank 6 months ago," Nancy explained, "trying to get a business loan. He claimed he was a partner in your law firm and needed capital for expansion." Mary felt her blood pressure rise, a surge of renewed anger. "He's never been a partner in my firm." "I know that now," Nancy confirmed. "But he had very convincing documentation. Business cards with his name, financial statements showing his ownership percentage, even what looked like partnership agreements. You didn't approve the loan, I hope." "No, thank God." Something felt wrong about his presentation. He was too eager, too pushy. "So I called your office to verify his partnership status. Your assistant told me Robert Johnson had no affiliation with your firm." Mary made quick, concise notes as Nancy talked. Another attempted fraud. Another meticulously crafted lie that could have devastated her business if it had succeeded. "Why are you coming forward now?" Mary asked, her tone searching. "I saw the newspaper article this morning and realized I needed to tell someone about this. If he had succeeded in getting that loan, your firm might have been held liable for repayment." Mary thanked Nancy warmly, genuinely grateful, and promised to pass the vital information to the prosecutor. As Nancy left, Mary's phone rang. The caller ID showed her divorce attorney's number. "Sarah, please tell me you have good news." "I do, actually," Sarah replied, a note of triumph in her voice. "Robert's attorney called this morning. He wants to negotiate a settlement." "What kind of settlement?" "Complete capitulation. Robert will sign over all claims to marital property, waive any spousal support, and agree to an expedited divorce in exchange for you not pursuing additional civil litigation beyond the criminal case." Mary considered the offer, weighing the pros and cons with her customary precision. "What's the advantage to me?" "Time and certainty," Sarah explained. "You'd have your divorce finalized in 6 weeks instead of 6 months. And you wouldn't have to worry about Robert trying to claim joint ownership of assets he helped you acquire." "What about the money he stole?" "The criminal case will address restitution. You'll get your money back either way." Mary made her decision quickly, decisively. "Accept the offer. I want him out of my life as completely as possible." "I'll call his attorney this afternoon," Sarah confirmed. As Mary hung up the phone, she realized that Robert's sudden willingness to negotiate meant he was finally understanding the true seriousness of his situation. His criminal attorney had undoubtedly explained that the evidence against him was overwhelming, that his best hope was to minimize the damage through cooperation. The tide had truly turned. That afternoon, Mary received a call from Chrysal. "Mrs. Johnson?" Chrysal's voice, now subdued and almost timid, began, "I wanted you to know that I met with the prosecutor yesterday. I gave them everything. Bank statements, receipts, text messages, everything I could think of." "How did it go?" Mary asked, her curiosity piqued. "They offered me immunity from prosecution in exchange for my testimony against Robert. I accepted." Mary felt a complex mix of satisfaction and a faint disappointment. Part of her, the wounded woman, wanted Chrysal to face consequences for her role in the affair, for her callous attempt to humiliate her. But from a purely legal standpoint, Chrysal's testimony would be absolutely crucial to securing Robert's conviction, a necessary evil for the greater good of justice. "There's something else," Chrysal continued, her voice hesitant. "The prosecutor asked me about other women. Apparently, they think Robert might have been involved with someone else before me." Mary's stomach dropped. "Someone else?" "They found hotel receipts and restaurant charges that don't match up with my timeline," Chrysal explained, a hint of her own betrayed confusion. "Someone else was getting gifts and trips before Robert and I even started dating. A third woman, or perhaps a fourth, a fifth." Mary realized with a weary sigh that she might never know the full scope of Robert's deception, the true extent of his parallel lives. But she also realized, with a profound sense of clarity, that it didn't matter. Whether there was one affair or 10, the marriage was over. Whether he stole $73,000 or twice that amount, he was going to prison. Whether he had lied about one thing or everything, she was done believing anything he said. Mary Johnson was no longer a victim. She was a survivor, and she was unequivocally winning. The courthouse buzzed with an unusual energy on the morning of Robert's sentencing hearing. Word had spread like wildfire through the local legal community, and several of Mary's colleagues had come to show their support, a silent but powerful statement of solidarity. The spectacle of a prominent attorney's husband being sentenced for embezzlement had also drawn significant media attention. Cameras and reporters gathered outside. Mary sat in the front row, impeccably dressed in a sharp black suit that projected an image of unshakable strength and professionalism. Behind her, she could hear hushed, whispered conversations about the case, about her, about the likely severity of Robert's sentence. Robert entered the courtroom in handcuffs, a stark contrast to the charming, self-assured man she had once known. Dressed in a drab orange jail jumpsuit, he looked pale, diminished, utterly broken. He had been in custody for 2 weeks, having pleaded guilty to all charges, his attorney having advised him that cooperation was his only hope for a reduced sentence. The judge, the Honorable Patricia Williams, no relation to Mary's business partner, called the court to order. She was known for being fair but exceptionally firm, and she had a particular intolerance for financial crimes. "Mr. Johnson," Judge Williams began, her voice resonating through the hushed courtroom, "you have pleaded guilty to embezzlement, fraud, identity theft, and making false statements to financial institutions. Before I pass sentence, is there anything you would like to say?" Robert stood, his legs visibly shaking, his gaze fixed on the judge. "Your Honor, I want to apologize to my wife, to her business, and to everyone I hurt with my actions. I have no excuse for what I did. I made terrible decisions, and I understand that I have to face the consequences." His voice was barely audible, a pathetic whisper of contrition. Mary felt nothing as she listened to his prepared statement. The man who had once commanded rooms with his charm and confidence was now utterly shattered, and she found she had no sympathy left for him, only a chilling emptiness. "Mr. Johnson," the judge continued, her voice stern, unyielding, "the evidence in this case shows a pattern of deception spanning over 2 years. You systematically stole from your wife's business, forged her signature multiple times, and used her identity to commit fraud. The total amount of theft exceeds $120,000. $120,000. The number had grown again as investigators meticulously uncovered more fraudulent transactions, more layers of his deceit. The court also notes that your crimes were not motivated by necessity, Judge Williams emphasized. You were not stealing to feed your family or pay for medical bills. You were stealing to fund an extramarital affair and maintain a lavish lifestyle you could not afford through legitimate means. The prosecutor then stood to address the court. Your Honor, the state recommends a sentence of 7 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Mr. Johnson's crimes were serious, ongoing, and showed a complete disregard for the law and for his victims. Robert's attorney, a seasoned public defender, argued for a reduced sentence, citing his client's cooperation and lack of prior criminal history. But Mary could see from the judge's unyielding expression that the arguments were falling on deaf ears. Some Mr. Johnson, Judge Williams concluded, her voice ringing with finality. I sentence you to 6 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will also pay full restitution to your victims, including interest and court costs, totaling $137,000. The gavel came down with a sharp, resonant thud, sealing Robert's fate. His shoulders sagged as the bailiff approached to escort him back to his cell. As they passed Mary's row, Robert looked at her one last time, a desperate, unreadable plea in his eyes. Mary met his gaze steadily, her expression neutral, unyielding. She felt no triumph in his downfall, but she felt no regret either. Justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, a throng of reporters descended upon Mary, thrusting microphones and cameras towards her, clamoring for a statement. She kept her comments brief, professional, and entirely composed. I'm satisfied with today's outcome, she stated clearly. The court has held Mr. Johnson accountable for his crimes, and that's what the justice system is designed to do. I'm looking forward to moving on with my life. That afternoon, Mary returned to her office to find a small package waiting for her. No return address, but she recognized Crisal's distinct handwriting on the label. Inside was a small jewelry box containing several pieces Mary had never seen before: a shimmering diamond necklace, elegant pearl earrings, a delicate gold bracelet. There was also a handwritten note, simple and stark. Mrs. Johnson, these are all the pieces Robert gave me that I still have. I sold some others to pay for my lawyer, but I wanted you to have these back. They belong to you since you paid for them. I'm sorry for everything. Crisal. Mary carefully examined the jewelry, the cold metal feeling foreign in her hands. Conservative estimates put the value at around $15,000, money that could have paid for a family vacation, crucial home improvements, or simply remained in her business accounts where it rightfully belonged. She placed the jewelry in her office safe. Later, she would have it appraised and add its value to Robert's ever-growing restitution debt. But for now, she was simply glad to have it back. Another piece of her stolen life recovered. Her business partner, Patricia, knocked softly on her open door. How do you feel? She asked, her voice gentle. Mary considered the question deeply. Closure? She mused. I think it's over. Robert is in prison. I have my business secure and I can finally move forward. Any regrets about pressing charges? No, Mary replied firmly. About the marriage ending? No. About 15 years with someone I never really knew? Mary paused, the question hanging in the air. Maybe, she finally conceded, but I can't change the past. I can only control what happens next. That evening, Mary drove to her mother's house for dinner. The first time in months, she felt genuinely relaxed, genuinely hopeful about the future. You look better, her mother observed as they sat down to eat. Stronger. I feel stronger, Mary replied, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. I learned that I can survive anything, even when the person I trusted most betrays me completely. What's next for you? Her mother asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Mary smiled more broadly this time, a quiet, joyful expression. Whatever I want. For the first time in years, my life is completely my own. I can make decisions based on what I want, not on what someone else needs or expects. As she drove home that night, the city lights a blur against the darkening sky, Mary thought about the woman who had sat in her office just 3 months ago, listening to Kreisel mock her boring life. That woman had been living a lie, married to a stranger, unwittingly funding his sordid affair with her own hard-earned money. The woman driving home tonight was fundamentally different. She was wiser, stronger, and completely free. She had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged victorious, not just in court, but in life. Robert was in prison, paying the price for his calculated deception. Kreisel was working multiple minimum wage jobs, slowly learning that actions indeed have consequences and prices. And Mary Johnson? She was planning her future, a future built on truth, integrity, and self-worth. A woman who would never again trust blindly or love unwisely. She had won more than a court case. She had won herself back. 6 months after Robert's sentencing, Mary's life had settled into a rhythm she never expected to enjoy so much. Her law practice was thriving, booming even. The widespread publicity from her own dramatic case had, somewhat ironically, brought her a deluge of new clients, women mostly, who admired her strength, her uncompromising fight for justice, and her formidable legal skills. She had purchased a new car, a sleek, powerful vehicle that felt truly hers, redecorated her house to reflect her new independent spirit, and taken her first proper vacation in 5 years, traveling to a sun-drenched island where the only demands were the ebb and flow of the tide. But the most unexpected and perhaps most profound change was how utterly content she felt being alone. For 15 years, she had defined herself, at least in part, as Robert's wife. Now she was simply Mary Johnson, attorney, business owner, and most importantly, a free woman. She was reviewing a complex set of contracts in her office one Thursday afternoon when her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Dr. Michael Thompson is here for your 3:00 appointment," the assistant announced. Mary looked at her calendar, confused. She didn't have any appointments scheduled for 3 o'clock. "I think there's been a mistake," she replied. "I don't have anything on my calendar." "He says it's about the Jefferson Medical Center case." Mary remembered now. Jefferson Medical Center was being sued for malpractice, and her firm had been hired to represent them. Dr. Thompson must be one of the physicians involved in the case. "Send him in," Mary instructed. The man who entered her office was not what she expected from a typical physician. Tall, with distinguished graying hair and kind, intelligent eyes, he moved with the quiet confidence she associated with skilled surgeons. But there was also something gentle about him, a warmth that immediately put her at ease. "Dr. Thompson," Mary began, offering a polite smile, "I'm sorry for the confusion about our appointment. I don't have you on my calendar." "Actually," he said, a slight, charming smile playing on his lips, "I lied to your assistant. I don't have an appointment. I'm here about something else entirely." Mary raised an intrigued eyebrow, waiting. "I read about your case in the newspaper," he confessed, his gaze steady and sincere, "your husband's embezzlement trial, and I wanted to tell you how much I admired the way you handled yourself throughout the entire process." Mary was taken aback, completely unprepared for such an overt personal approach. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Do we know each other?" "Not exactly," he replied, his smile softening. "But I was going through a similar situation at the same time. My wife of 20 years left me for her personal trainer. She took half of everything we had built together, including money she had stolen from our joint accounts to pay for plastic surgery and gifts for her boyfriend." Mary studied his face, seeing a pain, a deep-seated hurt that she recognized intimately. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice genuine. "That must have been devastating." "It was," Michael admitted. "But reading about your case, seeing how you fought back, how you refused to be a victim, it inspired me to take control of my own situation instead of wallowing in self-pity." They talked for an hour, the conversation flowing with an ease Mary hadn't experienced in years. Michael Thompson was a cardiologist, recently divorced, a father of 2 grown children who lived in other states. He was funny without being pushy, intelligent without being arrogant, and remarkably honest about his own mistakes and vulnerabilities. When he finally left, Mary found herself thinking about him for the rest of the day, a warmth spreading through her that was both unfamiliar and welcome. It had been months, years even, since she had thought about any man in a personal context. She had assumed that part of her life was over, that Robert's betrayal had left her too damaged to ever truly trust anyone again. But Dr. Thompson, Michael, had stirred something in her that she thought was long dead. He called her office the next day. "Mary," he began, a hint of nervousness in his voice, "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner sometime? Somewhere public, somewhere safe, just two people who understand what it's like to start over." Mary surprised herself by saying yes. Their first date was at a quiet, elegant restaurant downtown. They talked for hours about their careers, their divorces, their hopes for the future. Michael was nothing like Robert. He listened intently when she spoke, asked thoughtful, probing questions, and never once tried to impress her with exaggerated stories about his success or achievements. "Can I ask you something?" Michael inquired over dessert, his gaze direct and empathetic. "Do you ever worry that you'll never be able to trust anyone again?" Mary considered the question, a truth she had grappled with daily. "Every day," she admitted honestly. "Robert lied to me for 2 years, and I never suspected anything. How do I trust my own judgment anymore?" "I think about that too," Michael confessed. "My ex-wife was stealing money for months before I noticed. I keep wondering what other signs I missed, what other lies I believed." "But you're here," Mary pointed out gently. "You're willing to take the risk of getting to know someone new." "So are you," he replied, a soft smile. They dated slowly, carefully, rebuilding trust one conversation, one shared laugh, one quiet evening at a time. Michael understood Mary's deep need to maintain her independence, her reluctance to merge finances or make grand, sweeping commitments too soon. He had his own walls to navigate, his own fears to overcome. But gradually, over months of dinners and conversations and quiet evenings together, Mary found herself healing in ways she hadn't expected. Michael never tried to fix her or save her. He simply appreciated who she was, supported her goals, and offered a steady, respectful presence. "I've been thinking," he said one evening, as they walked hand in hand through downtown after dinner, "about what my ex-wife's trainer said to me when I confronted him." "What did he say?" Mary asked, intrigued. "He said I should thank him for taking her off my hands because I was too boring for someone like her." Michael paused under a streetlight, his expression thoughtful. "At the time, it hurt. But now I realize he was right. Right about being boring, right about being wrong for her. I am boring compared to a 25-year-old fitness instructor with six-pack abs and no responsibilities. But that doesn't make me worthless. It just makes me wrong for someone who wanted that kind of superficial excitement." Mary squeezed his hand. "Robert used to call me boring too. He said I was too focused on work, too serious, too old-fashioned. I spent years trying to be more fun, more spontaneous, more whatever he wanted me to be. And now I realize that I like being serious about my work. I like being old-fashioned about things like honesty and commitment. I like being focused on building something meaningful instead of just chasing the next thrill." "So do I," Michael said, looking at her, his eyes warm, "which is probably why we work so well together." They had been dating for 4 months when Mary felt ready to introduce Michael to her mother. She was nervous about the meeting. Her mother had been suspicious of Robert from the beginning, and Mary wasn't sure she was ready to have her judgment evaluated again. But her mother liked Michael immediately. "He looks at you the way a man should look at a woman he cares about," her mother observed after dinner as Michael was helping with the dishes. "Like he's grateful to be with you, not like he's doing you a favor." "It's still early, Mama. We're taking things slow." "Good. You should. But Mary, don't let what Robert did stop you from being happy. Not every man is a liar and a thief." That night, as Michael drove Mary home, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine happiness. Not the forced cheerfulness she had maintained during her marriage, but real contentment with her life and a quiet excitement about the future. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked, noticing her soft smile. "How different this feels from anything I've experienced before," Mary said. With Robert, I was always trying to be enough, to do enough, to make him happy. With you, I just am who I am. Who you are is pretty amazing, he said simply, his hand finding hers. As they pulled into her driveway, Mary realized that she was no longer afraid of love. She was still cautious, still fiercely protective of her independence, but she was no longer closed off to the possibility of partnership with someone who respected and valued her for precisely who she was. Robert had taken 15 years of her life, but he hadn't taken her capacity for joy. Michael was living, breathing proof of that. 1 year after Robert's sentencing, Mary stood in her new office looking out at the city skyline. Johnson & Associates had expanded dramatically, moving to a larger building, hiring 3 new attorneys, and handling more cases than ever before. The unexpected publicity from her own personal case had paradoxically brought in a flood of new clients who specifically wanted to work with a lawyer who understood financial betrayal, who wasn't afraid to fight for justice, and who had walked through the fire herself. Her personal life had transformed just as profoundly. Michael had proposed 3 months earlier, not with grand gestures or an ostentatious ring, but with a quiet, heartfelt conversation about building a future together based on mutual respect, shared values, and an honest understanding of their pasts. They were planning a small, intimate wedding for the following spring. Mary's intercom buzzed, pulling her from her reverie. "Mrs. Johnson," her assistant announced, "there's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Angela Foster, and she has a legal matter involving embezzlement." Another betrayed wife, Mary thought, a sense of familiar sadness, but also purpose, washing over her. Her practice had attracted dozens of them over the past year. Women whose husbands or business partners had stolen from them, women who desperately needed a lawyer who understood their situation not just professionally, but personally. "Send her in," Mary instructed, her voice calm and empathetic. Angela Foster was young, perhaps 35, and visibly shaking as she sat down across from Mary's expansive desk. She had the hollow-eyed, traumatized look of someone who had recently discovered that their entire life was built on a foundation of lies. "My husband has been stealing from our business," Angela said without preamble, her voice breaking. "I just found out yesterday. He's taken almost $200,000 over the past 3 years. Mary felt a familiar surge of anger, not for herself, but on behalf of this devastated stranger. "How did you discover it?" she asked gently. "His girlfriend came to our house," Angela choked out, tears finally spilling over. "She was angry because he hadn't paid her rent this month, and she thought I was hiding money from him. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend." Mary silently handed Angela a box of tissues, her mind flashing back to herself a year ago, sitting in this very office, learning that her husband was a thief and a liar. But Angela would be luckier than Mary had been. She would have an experienced, empathetic advocate from the very beginning. "Angela," Mary said softly, her voice filled with a quiet strength, "I want you to know that you're going to get through this. It feels impossible right now, completely overwhelming, but you will not only survive, you will come out stronger on the other side." "How can you be so sure?" Angela whispered, her eyes searching Mary's face for a glimmer of hope. Mary smiled, a genuine, comforting expression. "Because I've been exactly where you are right now, and I can show you how to fight back." And they spent 2 hours going over Angela's excruciating situation, developing a meticulous strategy for protecting her remaining assets, and building an airtight criminal case against her deceptive husband. As Angela left the office, armed with a clear plan and the support of a competent, deeply understanding attorney, Mary felt the deep, profound satisfaction that came from turning her own painful experience into a powerful way to help others reclaim their lives. That evening, Mary and Michael had dinner at the same quiet restaurant where they'd had their very first date. As they talked about their day, their work, their plans for the weekend, Mary reflected on how dramatically, how profoundly her life had changed. "I got a letter from Robert today," she mentioned casually as they shared a decadent chocolate dessert. Michael raised an eyebrow. "From prison?" "Yes. He's up for parole review next year, and he wanted me to know that he's been attending counseling and working to understand why he made the choices he did. How do you feel about that? Mary considered the question carefully. Indifferent, mostly. I hope he gets the help he needs, truly, but it doesn't change anything for me. The damage is done, and I've moved on. Do you think you'll respond to the letter? No. There's nothing left to say between us. As they walked to Michael's car, Mary's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and started laughing softly, a genuine, joyful sound. "What's so funny?" Michael asked, intrigued. "It's from Patricia. She just saw Crisol at the grocery store. Apparently, she's working as a cashier and living with 2 roommates in a tiny apartment across town. Do you feel bad for her?" Michael probed gently. Mary thought about it for a moment, weighing her emotions. "No," she finally decided, her voice clear. "She made her choices, just like Robert did. She chose to get involved with a married man. She chose to accept expensive gifts without asking where the money came from. She chose to come to my office to humiliate me. Now she's dealing with the consequences." "And you?" "I'm dealing with the consequences too," Mary replied, her gaze meeting his, filled with warmth and certainty. "But my consequences are a thriving business, a beautiful, honest relationship, and the knowledge that I'm strong enough to handle whatever life throws at me." 2 weeks later, Mary was in court, representing Angela Foster in her husband's criminal trial. As she meticulously presented evidence of systematic theft and financial abuse, she thought about how many women she had helped over the past year. Each case was different in its specifics, but the underlying pattern was heartbreakingly similar. Men who thought they could steal from their wives, their partners, without consequences, and women who, when pushed to their absolute limits, discovered an extraordinary strength they never knew they possessed. During a brief break in the proceedings, Mary checked her phone and found a text from an unknown number. "This is Crisol. I saw you on the news representing that woman whose husband stole from her. I wanted you to know that I think what you're doing is important. I'm sorry for everything I put you through." Mary read the message twice, then, with a quiet sense of finality, deleted it without responding. She had no interest in rekindling any kind of relationship with Crisol, even a cordial one. That chapter of her life, and all the pain it contained, was definitively closed. That evening, Mary arrived home to find Michael cooking dinner and her mother visiting. The 3 of them had developed an easy, comfortable relationship over the months, a feeling of family that enveloped Mary and filled her with a profound sense of belonging. "Now, how did court go today?" her mother asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "We won," Mary announced, a quiet triumph in her voice. Angela's husband pleaded guilty to all charges and agreed to full restitution. "He'll serve 3 years in prison." "Good," her mother said firmly, a deep satisfaction in her tone. "Actions have consequences." After dinner, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Michael took Mary's hand. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, his voice filled with admiration. "Not just for what you've accomplished professionally, but for how you've transformed your own trauma into a powerful way to help other people." Mary squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with gratitude. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought Robert's betrayal had broken something in me that could never be fixed." "What do you think now?" he asked softly. "Now," Mary said, her gaze fixed on the disappearing sun, her voice filled with a profound sense of clarity and peace. "I think Robert's betrayal revealed something in me that I never knew was there. Strength, independence, the ability to fight for what's right. He thought he was destroying me, but he actually set me free." As the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the world in twilight, Mary reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. From the devastating discovery of Robert's theft and deception, through the arduous, painful process of divorce and legal battles, to building a new life based entirely on her own values and choices, she had fundamentally transformed herself. She had transitioned from a victim of circumstance into an unyielding victor, a woman who had faced her darkest fears and emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentically herself than ever before. Robert was in prison, facing the full, undeniable consequences of his crimes. Kreisel was navigating the harsh realities of minimum wage jobs, slowly learning that actions have profound prices. And Mary Johnson? She was living her best life, a life more fulfilling, more joyful, and more authentic than she had ever dared to dream. She had won more than a court case, more than a divorce settlement. She had won herself back. The sun set completely, plunging the world into darkness, but Mary smiled, a bright inner light radiating within her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new clients to help, new opportunities to grow. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, truly at peace, truly content, and profoundly, beautifully free.